Welcome to the King of the Court podcast with Ben Riggs and Ben Staten.
Welcome to the King of the Court podcast. I'm Ben Riggs. This is Ben Staten.
Yep.
Relatively quiet trade deadline, came and gone without much fanfare.
Some have even called it a mundane trade deadline.
Yeah, mundane trade line. Stole all the eyes away from football heading into Super Bowl week. But look, that kind of thing doesn't happen. That kind of hysteria and drama and just like literally sucked all the air out of the room. That kind of thing doesn't happen without some major trades taking place.
Absolutely. I think
honestly,
people realize this year it's wide open for a lot of teams and teams are going for it. They're really going for it.
Yeah. And I think like honestly, you know, I mean, there are a few of these trades that would be considered big. I think there are three trades that would have been considered big at any trade deadline at any point. But one of them was so shocking that, it just has sort of monopolized everyone's attention.
Talk about Marvin Bagley to the Raptors, right?
That's the big one that everybody's been talking about. But what we're going to do is we're going to rank the top, like, who are the big three winners in order. I'm going to start, and I'm going to go out on a limb, controversial. I feel like I'm almost breaking news. I feel like that the Los Angeles Lakers are the clear winners of the 2025 trade deadline.
Unquestionably. They executed two fantastic trades. The first one, obviously, Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis and Max Christie. It's, and only one first-round pick. It is one of the greatest trades ever executed in NBA history. I
think it's easy to just look at this trade, knowing what you know about it, and really just not give much credit to Rob Pelinka because it's just one of those decisions that anybody would have pulled the trigger on, and there's an element of that is true. But I'm gonna go further, and I'm gonna say this is the best trade that any NBA team has pulled off since the turn of the century.
It's up there. I mean, like the Lakers have a history of pulling off trades like this before. I mean, the Pau Gasol trade.
What trade would you put? Is it kind of TBD, like depending on what Luka does in Los Angeles?
I think if you're Luka's gonna be fantastic there. Like he's 25. Like absent him being hit by a car or some other horrific things, he's gonna have another decade of elite play, all NBA, all-time great play.
Yeah. But if you're to pull off a trade of that magnitude, I agree. There's a little bit of it where you don't even have to give credit to Rob Pelinka other than the fact he can keep a secret and keep it quiet. But there's another part of it because you mentioned there were two trades that the Lakers pulled off. If Rob Pelinka wasn't savvy in the first trade and convinced Nico Harrison that Luka Doncic was in fact not worth also Dalton Connect and an additional first-round pick on top of Anthony Davis and Max Christie, then Rob Pelinka would not have had the assets most likely to pull off the Mark Williams trade, which was also a very good trade for the Los Angeles Lakers. So to catch everyone up to speed, you've got Luka Doncic leaving the Dallas Mavericks, as everyone knows. I think everyone knows. I went to my neighborhood convenience store, and the owner asked me something about Dirk Nowitzki, and I was like, why are we talking about Dirk? Have you heard about Luka? This is like 2 days after the trade, and he's like, no, what happened to Luka? And I'm like, I said, you work too much, man. Like, if there was ever like because you don't even have to be a basketball fan. Like, you just know Luka got traded. But Luka Doncic gets traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick, I think 2029, I forget. 2031. And in the course of the trade negotiations, if you want to call them that, Nico Harrison, the GM for the Dallas Mavericks, foolishly initiated this trade where he calls Rob Pelinka his good buddy. Rob Pelinka was Kobe's agent. Nico Harrison was Kobe's Nike rep. And Nico Harrison calls his good buddy Rob Pelinka and says, we're trading Luka Doncic. Rob Pelinka probably laughs, realizes he's serious, falls out of his chair, get back in his chair, and then says, who else have you told this to? Nico Harrison says, no one. At which point, Rob Pelinka's like, I think that's smart. I really think you got to keep this quiet because if Luka finds out about it, you'll never be able to do it. And I agree with you, man. I think like this is the best thing for y'all. And then Nico Harrison says, "Great. I'm glad you're interested. What we want is Dalton Connect, 2 first-round picks, and Anthony Davis." And Rob Pelinka has the balls to look at Nico Harrison and say, "I'd love to do it, but I'm not going to be able to give you Dalton Connect and that other first-round pick." And Nico Harrison says, "Well, why? It's Luka Doncic." And he goes, "I hear you, but there's risks there, Nico." And
He
one
may
of those,
not resign.
yeah,
That was literally the thing he listed.
yeah.
Was that I'm not sure an NBA star will resign with the Los Angeles Lakers. A thing that has never happened in NBA history. As a player,
And
like, you know what? I'm just gonna bounce for the hell of it. Yeah.
and Nico says, "Oh my God, you're right." And Rob's like, "Well, I'll tell you what we could do. I could just ask Luka, are you going to resign? But then, hey, that might jeopardize the whole thing. Are you sure you want me to do that, Nico?" And Nico tells Rob, "No, man, we got to keep it quiet. I understand where you're coming from. You keep that first round pick and you keep Dalton Connect." And Rob Palenka's like, "Well, gee, golly golly. If you think I need to keep it, I will, Nico." And then they announce it to the world, and the whole world thinks you're full of shit. There's no way this has happened. It's so stupid. There's no way you've traded Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a single first round pick. In fact, I told you one way you know this trade is fake is because there's no way you would trade Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first round pick. There's just no way. And the whole world reacted the exact same way. They all assume that Shams has been hacked. Then Shams retweets it and says, "This is real." At which point, everybody says the next most logical thing, which was, "This is exactly what a hacker would say." A hacker would say this was real and not a hack. And so then Bobby Marks has to retweet it and go, "No, I've talked to Shams. This is real." And then you see it on ESPN, and you're
Had
like,
Bobby Marks not been there, you would have had to have Shams holding the newspaper up, pointing at the
100%.
date, being like, "This is
Well,
real."
you got that 36 hours later with the press conference with Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison, where Jason Kidd looks like he's in a Taliban video out there explaining it to everybody. But like real quick, the reason why the Lakers are the clear, obvious winners of this trade, I almost feel like we don't even need to explain this in great detail. It's just because they got Luka Doncic, and they got Luka Doncic for virtually nothing. And the fact that they were able to whittle it down and keep some of their assets enabled them to turn around and then go leverage those assets for Anthony Davis, for Mark Williams. And so they were able to pair a 7-foot whatever center from Charlotte, who's a good center, averaging about 15, 16 points a game in Charlotte. And we all know Luka Doncic upgrades players like that.
So yeah, let's take a pause here, because I think the most important thing we can do is just analyze, like, how do you see both these players fitting in to the Lakers
By
roster?
both of these players, you mean Mark Williams and Luka, or do you mean Luka and AD?
Let's start off with like the basics. Like, what I think, like, we can all agree that the starting lineup's going to be probably Luka, Austin Reeves, LeBron, probably Vanderbilt, and then Mark Williams.
I think you're more likely to see Rui
Rui or Dorian Finney-Smith. So
Rui or Dorian Finney-Smith is
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
one of them.
And
two.
so, I think, like, what role? I mean, obviously, what are you thinking is Luka's role? Is he going to be the on-ball? Sort of dominant point guard?
This is Luka Doncic's team. Luka Doncic. So for starters, because I think there are some things that even before you get to like what it looks like on the court, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's a bigger Luka fan or LeBron fan than I am.
Yeah. This is correct.
I'm also have a hard time with the Lakers, and somehow my 3 favorite players in history have all now suited up for the Lakers. But I will admit that while I think the conditioning stuff with Luka Doncic has been overblown for a very long time, if you just go back and look through some of our prior episodes, I've gone on rants about this. My problem is we're sitting here talking about a guy like he's debilitatingly out of shape, ignoring the fact that whatever shape he's playing in, he's playing to the level of a 5-time straight All-NBA first-team guy, scoring title leader, perennial MVP candidate, 2-time Western Conference final appearance, and then a finals appearance just last year. I don't think you can be out of shape and play at that level. 100 games last year with some of the highest usage rate and highest minutes in the league, and be out of shape. Do you agree with me about that?
I fully agree with you on that. I think that if he was out of shape, he wouldn't have been like out of shape people with the amount of wear and tear he puts on his body, with the amount of like physicality he plays with, you'd be a lot more injured. And I know, yes, he just came off of a calf injury, but he plays so physically that he puts so much stress on his muscles. He puts so much stress, like he's not jumping out of the gym, but he is.
He's playing a contact sport.
He's grinding people to dust. Like
Yes.
he's playing a contact sport, and
Yes.
so the idea that this guy is like this is someone who couldn't even run a 5K, for example, is insane. Like
Yeah,
we're talking about a
bring
really
it
really
up.
strong athlete.
I bring it up for two reasons. One is, and neither of them are to refute the slander that's coming out of the Mavericks organization, which is really about Nico Harrison trying to save face and explain the unexplainable. I bring it up to say that Luka could be in better shape.
Yes.
And I think if you're looking for someone who would be capable of mentoring a star of Luka's magnitude, particularly in terms of like off the court, taking care of your body, staying in good shape, coming into the season ready to go, and being able to maximize your talents through being in peak physical shape. I don't think you could find a better person in sports history, maybe, than LeBron James. And LeBron has the status and the cachet to be able to do that with a player like Luka. So that's before we talk about Luka's fit on the court. I think that's an element of his fit in LA that's extremely important. I think he will learn a lot from LeBron James, both on and off the court. Two, I bring it up to say that you did slander him.
I
It
did
was
slander?
no. Nico Harrison, the
Oh, good.
Dallas
Yeah,
Mavericks.
yeah. I
You
was
did.
gonna say I don't think so, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not accusing you of this. Nico Harrison, Dallas Mavericks did slander Luka. The way in which he left was incredibly messy. A player who has been with the franchise since he was 18 years old does not deserve something like that. It was utterly ridiculous. But part of his fit in LA, or maybe part of his story in LA, needs to be understood that it will be a vengeance tour. Luka Doncic, like Anthony Edwards said in an interview recently, Nico Harrison, I would be willing to bet money on it. Nico Harrison has created a monster. Whether Frankenstein comes out the lab next week when Luka makes his debut, or next season when the Lakers have had time to have a camp and bring in whatever additional pieces they need, I don't know. But he's created a monster. And he created a monster and unleashed that monster in the Western Conference, where he has to go through that monster to reach his own goal. And I think that was a massive mistake. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you create a situation where you have an athlete who is famous for his ability to motivate himself from grudges. And you gave him what is going to be the biggest grudge he will have over the course of his entire career playing basketball, full stop.
Yeah, and
Nothing else
to be clear, he can do this with random fans he's never met before who are talking trash to him in a game.
Yes.
Imagine what he's able to do in terms of like self-motivation based on a grudge like this.
Yes. And there's nothing that will happen in Luka Doncic's career that will be more embarrassing, more humiliating, and more stunning and out of the blue than what happened to him this past week.
Man bought a $12.5 million home the week before the trade happened, had every intention of spending the rest of his career in Dallas, is a new father who is raising a child in Dallas, and that was his American home. That's where he had come from since he came from Europe. That's where he'd been since he came from Europe. And so I feel like he had the rug pulled out from underneath him. I think it was done in a very messy way. I think you slandered him on the way out the door. I think you sent him to a Western Conference rival, pissed off, ready to prove you wrong. And I think you paired him with probably the one player in NBA history who could teach him more than any other player. And the reason I bring all this up before I even talk about what the on the court fit is I think all of this is more important than the on the court fit. Because the truth is, the Lakers lineup right now, there's a lot of variance with how this could look. But LeBron's 40. This is not going to be the roster that Luka is competing with for the foreseeable future. The more important takeaway from this is that you have created a monster and you've sent him to the one place where he could learn more from another player than anywhere else. And you've put yourself in a position where you have to defeat that monster. Now, with that said, I'll start with the negatives on the court. I do agree with you. I think Austin Reeves' level of play in recent weeks has been high enough. I mean, honestly, he's played very well. That it's hard to move him to the bench. Like, he would have to play himself off the floor. I do not expect Austin Reeves to have any difficulty adapting to Luka Doncic on the offensive end of the floor, because I don't think fundamentally it's going to be that much different than playing off of LeBron. With that said, I think at the defensive end, Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic could be a porous defensive backcourt, which is why I actually think you're probably going to have to. Yeah. No, it will be a porous defensive backcourt. If I'm playing devil's advocate for it, I would say that the workload for both Austin Reeves and LeBron James will go down on the offensive end some. Luka's going to carry a lot of that burden, which may, keep a little more in the tank for Austin Reeves and LeBron to exert themselves on the defensive end. But I still think the only way that this ends up being tenable is I think Rui is a better offensive player than Dorian Finney-Smith, but I think that the need of the team will be what DFS could provide you as a point of attack defender versus Rui Hachimura. And you'll try to stash Austin Reeves on like the second scoring option if it's a perimeter player, and then move Luka Doncic over to guarding a 3 or a 4, depending on the matchup. I think that they will immediately go to a style of defense where defenders are funneling attackers to Mark Williams at the rim, and you should see his block shots per game go up. But I mean, it remains to be seen how JJ Redick will have the team playing defense. To be fair to the Lakers, with Austin Reeves on the court and Anthony Davis out of the game for I think the last 8 games, the Lakers had the third best defense in the NBA. JJ Redick had them playing very well. They've been on a run of late, and a big part of that has been their defense. But to me, that's the negative. Do you agree that the weak spot in this fit with Luka there is going to be the perimeter defense, especially once they plug the hole at center with Mark Williams?
Yes, this team is going to live and die based off of their ability to guard speedy point guards. Right now, there is like Austin Reeves struggles mightily with point guards who have quick first steps and who are shifty. Luka, that is the type of point guard that Luka has the biggest problem with. Historically, he tends to bail himself out by trying to just hook them and try to knock the ball out on the drives. The Lakers, Mark Williams is a good, he's huge. He's legitimately a colossus. Like, he's one of the largest people in the NBA. But his vertical rim protection is not his strength. If all you have to do is look at his block numbers, he's not actually he's not Derek Lively. He's definitely not Daniel Gafford, and
he's definitely not Daniel Gafford. I think he averages like 1.2 blocks per game, but he's also doing that. I think he's only averaging 25 minutes a game in Charlotte.
And part of the problem with that when you watch his tape is that he's slow in rotations. He just has he's got humongous feet. It's hard for him to shift,
Yeah.
and the shuffle over. He's just a big dude.
Yeah,
And
and
he's also
for like a 7'2" dude, he's not a thin guy. Like typically you see people like that be a little bit thinner. He
no,
is a
he's
sturdy man. He is a very sturdy man.
and there's been an issue with him when you watch him and that he'll get in the right position. He just doesn't. The play doesn't convert. Like it's just I think his. I think there are some coordination issues, but like the bigger issue, Williams is going to provide them enough at center that that's not going to become a point on defense. Where I think that they're just going to, they're going to sink or swim. If Reeves and Luka are not able to prevent dribble penetration at will on defense, like if the teams are able to just carve them up, which is a serious concern right now.
It is.
It's especially because they have they're a bigger team and they don't have necessarily the most athletic guards on perimeter guards. That's going to make it really hard to recover, and it's going to cause LeBron to have to scramble. It's going to cause Vanderbilt's going to become incredibly important in that regard. Like if that becomes if the issue is that if they can't do that, Vanderbilt's got to play something like 35 minutes a game because his recovery ability is going to become key.
Well,
Yeah,
the thing about Vanderbilt though, I think like LeBron is shooting the three the last couple of years, probably the best he ever has in his career, without a doubt.
yeah. He's like a
And
smidge under 40% right now. Yeah.
yeah, and Austin Reeves. Honestly, this is anecdotal. I wouldn't know for sure, but I feel like Austin Reeves' 3-point percentage takes a tick up if you just get him to take a step back off of the 3-point line. He shoots that very well. So I mean, you'll have 3-point shooting on the floor, but LeBron and Austin Reeves, I think Austin Reeves is a little bit better as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but neither of them are just purely catch and shoot guys. They're more, stepping into threes. They're rhythm shooters.
Yes.
I think you need like Rui Hachimura would probably be the best catch and shoot 3-point shooter on the team. But Rui Hachimura doesn't move his feet well enough on the perimeter to provide them with the perimeter defense that they're going to need if they've got Luka and Austin Reeves out there.
Yeah.
DFS can shoot the three, and Dorian Finney-Smith can shoot the three and move his feet on the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he ends up being the better fit. Vanderbilt's probably a better on-ball defender than either of them.
He's got a lot more speed than either of the other two. Like
Yeah,
he's quicker.
but he can't shoot it.
No, that was my point. I was going to mention is Vanderbilt historically and for the Lakers in the playoffs has been basically excised from the rotation because his offensive deficiencies become so pronounced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that when you go to the other end of the floor, though, with the Lakers, this is where I have no idea what this is going to look like. The variance. Now, I will say this. For everybody who's saying Luka and LeBron can't play together, I don't buy that. We're dealing with two guys who are too talented, and particularly in LeBron's case, too versatile, can play too many different ways. And most importantly, two guys who are way too smart and have too high a basketball IQ to not be able to figure it out. So the idea that they can't play together, I don't buy. Now, I could see where, there's a high floor for this. And in terms of like the short term, what it ends up looking like, I have no idea. It could be somewhat clunky. Or this could end up being one of the greatest offensive duos we've ever seen. That's how great the variance is between them two, the pairing between them two in my mind is.
Yeah. No, I think it's look. It's gonna be something. It's gonna be really interesting. I think that they both have the basketball intelligence to figure it out. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about. I think that there's gonna be adjustment periods for both. Especially I think the ball's going to be in Luka's hands. It should be in Luka's hands. He should be the primary one.
I think it most certainly will be in Luka's hands.
I think there will be some adjustment periods, but I think that they both have the ability to adapt in a way that I am very confident in this partnership working very well. And
Yeah, I
producing
think I
high-level
think
offense.
too. Like you go to, I mean, you're definitely going to see Luka and LeBron in the 2-man game. I believe that with every fiber of my being. And I think that will be a devastating action for teams to deal with, because I think you just put Mark Williams down in the dunker spot, and then have Luka and LeBron at the top, running pick and roll, dribble handoff, whatever the case may be. But I also think Austin Reeves' playmaking ability. One of the big differences I think you will see versus Dallas is when Luka came off ball in Dallas. Essentially, you were then working out of Kyrie Irving and ISO.
Yeah.
That was the downtime Luka got when he was off ball in Dallas. Was Kyrie Irving's going to ISO someone and get a shot, or maybe ISO someone and collapse the defense and then dump it off to someone in the dunker spot. I think in LA, one of the issues will be that you've got Austin Reeves and LeBron also able to do the 2-man action. You've got Luka and able to do the 2-man action with Mark Williams. I just think there's a lot that they can do. I think there are an awful lot of possibilities. And I think that they have the type of coach who probably hasn't slept a wink since this has happened, because he's just sitting in his bed at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking of all the things he can do with these two guys. I think this is right up JJ Redick's alley. And he's getting a crash course in coaching. He went from being a podcaster to coaching LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Luka Doncic all in his first year. So I think that offensively they're going to be a juggernaut. Defensively, I need to see it.
Yep.
That's kind of where I am with the Lakers. I really like the addition of Mark Williams. I think Rob Pelinka gets an AAA for this trade deadline. And
look, they could miss the playoffs, and this would still be a great trade. This,
1,000%.
This trade, you have gotten a player who's probably going to end up top 10 all time when all said is done. He has made 5 all NBA first teams before the age of 25. This is he is on pace to have one of the greatest careers of all time. I'm not going to relegate Dallas being insane for letting him go, but just getting him is in and of itself makes this season a complete success. You've got this is a player that in all likelihood one of the worst case outcomes is him getting his jersey retired and being remembered as one of the greatest Lakers of all time.
Yeah. 1,000%. 1,000%. You could have just landed the greatest. It is within the realm of possibility that this past Saturday night, Rob Pelinka signed the future greatest Laker of all time.
Yeah.
That's why so many people in the NBA hate the goddamn Los Angeles Lakers. I'm not a Laker hater. I've never been like a Laker fan. I'm a LeBron fan. I was a Shaq fan, so I've watched the Lakers a ton over the course of my life, but always reluctantly rooted for them. But I can certainly understand where people are coming from, because I remember conversations at the beginning of this year where these conversations may have even been on this podcast. I don't remember, where the conversation revolved around how the Lakers have invested so heavily in a 32-year-old and a 40-year-old, and they don't really have anything figured out for the future. And then just one random Saturday night, the entire future gets figured out in a single tweet.
Yep.
So
there's a Lakers manifest destiny, and I don't want to it's accurate. They just fell into an all-time great player who was literally just handed to them.
Yes.
And and by a franchise which then looked stunned when there was public backlash from their own fans. But no, I don't want to get us too sidetracked. Lakers fans have a right to be jubilant. I think that there's a lot of discourse. I would err right now on the side of the Lakers being really, really, really good over the side of them being, then over the side of this not working out. I think that the likelihood is this team is going to be quite good and can make
Oh,
a
I
deep run in
think
the
I think
playoffs.
the franchise is in great shape. I think
Yeah.
that this particular team, this team, I would feel somewhat confident in saying this team will not be a play-in team.
No, I think they make the play-in. I think this is a team that's probably closer. I would say that they are one of the two favorites right now in the West to be a Western Conference Finals team.
Yeah.
That would be my thing. I think they
And
have.
going back to the point you made earlier, where a lot of teams made a move because they felt like things were wide open. Like nobody is afraid. Like it was funny to me. Let's you and me do a victory lap real quick. I'm watching NBA, the trade deadline show on ESPN today. And Brian Windhorst says that from talking to GMs and coaches around the league, that a lot of this activity was spurred by the fact that no one is afraid of the two teams at the top of the Western Conference. Now, I think we can sit Houston aside. I don't think anybody's really propped them up as a contender this year. But you and me, from since before the season started up until today, have held to OKC is a great regular season team. This
Yep.
team is not going to win a championship.
Yep.
And we can feel extremely validated in our thinking because basically every NBA exec and coach has looked at the Western Conference and said, yeah, we can beat OKC. And they're really swinging for it. Now, on the Mavs side of this trade, there have been quite a few people who have said that they think that the Mavs won it in the short term. I don't necessarily, like, if by that we mean...
No, they did not. You don't get the worst player in the trade who's older than the player you traded for and then say you won the trade. That's not how basketball works. Like, AD's a good player. They already were loaded at the big position. They don't, and now they just have like two, like, now they're like a fucking team from the 90s that they just sort of transplanted here out of nowhere and are like, this is going to work really well. Like, this is dumb. This is not how it's going to work. It drives me crazy. If you get the worst player, if you get the older player and you get the more injury-prone player, that's not going to make you a better team.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think that I honestly assumed that you would see Dallas move one of their two other bigs after they got Anthony Davis. But this is now a team that just has a rotation of 3 starting caliber bigs, which is all fine and well. But basically what they're betting is that last year's Minnesota Timberwolves team was the best team in the NBA and what you needed to beat the Boston Celtics, which makes no sense to me. I think that the problem for the Dallas Mavericks, if we're being perfectly honest, is that they have, and there's no reason for us not to be, and I don't even know why I said that, but they acquired a player who has fetishized the idea of him being a 4 and not a 5 for a number of years now. He has publicly called for the Lakers, and I'm talking about Anthony Davis, has publicly called for the Lakers to get an additional starting big to move him to the 4 and LeBron to the 3 or whatever. My problem with this is that I actually watched the Lakers play. And Anthony Davis does not stretch the floor. Anthony Davis is a streaky shooter from the mid-range. I don't care about Anthony Davis on the three-point line. And I think that Dallas trying to run 2 bigs, I'm not going to say it could never work, but I will say for anyone who thinks you're just going to start running a 2 big lineup in Dallas, so for the immediate future, we know that Anthony Davis will be at the 4, Daniel Gafford will be at the 5. Kyrie Irving will be your point guard. And so the question is, who's at the 2 and the 3? It sounds like P.J. Washington is going to be at the 3. And if P.J. Washington is at the 3, you now have most likely Klay Thompson at the 2. I remember very well the recent Pelicans game where Jason Kidd, curiously, designed a play out of a timeout at the end of the game where he put the ball in Klay Thompson's hand and had him bring the ball up the court to initiate the offense and try to get his shot because Klay was knocking down shots. Klay got his pocket picked at half court. Klay is not a good ball handler and cannot be seen as the second best ball handler on the floor for you, and you think that is a winning lineup. If P.J. Washington, who probably is the second best ball handler in the lineup I just described, if P.J. Washington is your second best ball handler, you're going to have a problem there. There's also a lack of playmaking. Outside of Kyrie Irving, nobody on that team's creating a shot for someone else. And I think that if you think you can just immediately install a two big lineup and make it work overnight, you need to study the Cleveland Cavaliers a little bit more, who struggled to make Evan Mobley and Jared Allen work for the past couple of years and finally got it clicking this year. It takes time. There's going to be a lack of space. It's going to be clunky. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lack of space. It's going to be clunky. There's going to be players who've never played before together. I don't know if Lively's ever played in a coordinated basketball fashion with another ball dominant big who plays inside the perimeter. Like, I'm sure he's played with stretch fives, stretch fours, but like there's a lack of ball handling, like you pointed out. There's a lack of speed outside of Kyrie in the lineup. Like it's
There's not a lack of speed. There isn't any.
Yeah.
Like there's just like a complete.
Because even the backup options aren't speedsters. Like this is a team like, it's surprising to me they didn't make a move like try to even get like a Jose Alvarado, to shore up their guard rotation. They could use someone like that just to offer a change of pace on the bench. I think that this team has lowered its ceiling dramatically. The Kyrie's a fantastic player. AD's a fantastic player. Neither of them have the A plus. Like when you get to the higher levels of the playoffs, neither of them are going to be the best player on the core in elite matchups against top 5 teams.
No,
they're not going to be against the Celtics. They're not going to be against the Lakers. They're not going to be against, I would argue, even the Cavs.
I mean, I would argue with the Lakers.
They're not going to be against Thunder.
I would argue with the Lakers, one of the problems that they've had with the LeBron AD era since LeBron, like really the last 2 or 3 years, is that it's inarguable LeBron isn't what prime LeBron once was. That is a fact.
I got our episode on that topic from 2 months ago. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, even then, like I still quibble with that episode because I think LeBron's been fantastic.
Don't quibble with our episodes.
I
stand by all content produced by our studio.
I don't. I think we were wrong. Like, I think LeBron. I think LeBron.
Certainly,
LeBron's fantastic, and I think he looked masterful against the Knicks the other night. It doesn't look like prime LeBron, but he was still the best player on the floor. And I think that the problem that the Lakers have had with AD was the plan was always for AD to eventually usurp LeBron. And look, the way people have talked about it is they've talked about it as though it's like a fucking birthday cake or something. Like when the idea of it's your team now. Look, LeBron doesn't just walk in the locker room and go, AD, it's your team now. And that's just how things go. The season started with the Los Angeles Lakers featuring Anthony Davis more prominently. He was the focal point of the offense, and he looked great. And then what happened was teams went, oh, they're actually doing it this year. AD's the main guy. And they started scheming to deal with AD, and you saw his numbers drop. And LeBron realized he had to step back up into that role. They moved Austin Reeves to point guard. LeBron and Austin Reeves started to play off of each other. And the Lakers streak began. And when you look at a large portion of that streak, AD wasn't there. AD's still a great player. AD was never able to take the crown from LeBron in Los Angeles. And for people who want to say that LeBron just wouldn't give it to him, Luka will step onto the court in Los Angeles with that crown.
Yes, I agree. I think this is clearly Luka's team. He is the better player at this point. He's unquestionably the better player. I think that I will reiterate. I think that this team has the potential to make a pretty deep playoff run. Do I think that they're like a
Or are you
surefire
talking about
title
the? Are you
contender?
talking about the Lakers or the Mavs?
The Lakers.
Well, I was talking. I'm
Yeah.
still. I'm still talking about
Yeah.
the Mavs in that, like, I think that the problem that the Mavs have is they got a guy who couldn't be Batman on his previous team. He tried and never could put on the suit. And Kyrie Irving, look, being a Robin on a really good NBA team, you've got to be incredible to be that good, right?
Mhm.
I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying Kyrie's career has been like, when he's at his best, he is a Robin to someone else's Batman.
Yep.
And I'm saying that AD has been a Robin to someone else's Batman when he was at his best. And
Yeah.
now
No,
the Dallas Mavericks traded arguably the best Batman in the league to pair two Robins together. And that's why when I look at this team, that and the idea behind it, playing two bigs, I look at the Dallas Mavericks and I say, I think this is going to be clunky. I think you've lowered your ceiling. I think there are teams in the Western Conference you will be able to bully in the playoffs. I think there are other teams you will be a horrible matchup for. And quite frankly, if you end up having to face the Nuggets, I think, Jokic is still a mountain you have to climb in the West. AD has never climbed it.
Nope. On a side note, how many Robins does it take to make a Nightwing? Is it like 2? Are we talking about 3?
Well, they don't really have. Yeah, I mean, there's no one else on that roster that I think you could describe as a Robin. And then the other thing you're gonna have to figure out too is, like, Klay Thompson, I think, is a really good example of this. He was brought in with the idea of pairing him with Luka, having someone who is the best in the world at creating open looks for other people. And then suddenly Klay Thompson is expected to create his own space for a shot, and I think he's just sort of beyond that.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think that the Mavericks lost the trade in the short term. I think they got their ass just handed to them in the long term. I think that if we're grading the Mavericks side of this trade, the Lakers got AAA plus plus plus. I think that the Dallas Mavericks get triple F plus plus plus. I don't think they will be a triple F plus 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 team this year. But grading the trade and what Dallas got in return for Luka Doncic and the idea of trading Luka Doncic in the first place, Nico Harrison gets the worst imaginable grade you can for this trade. What do you
He's
think?
definitely the court jester of the week. Yeah, he's definitely the court jester of the week in this.
Yeah. All
this
right,
podcast.
so we agree the Lakers won the last 20 years of trade deadline contest. Moving along, which team do you think which team finished second in terms of improving their product on the floor with the trade that they made? Like, who's better both in the short term and in the long term as a result of a trade they made at the deadline?
Oh, I think it's unquestionably the San Antonio Spurs. I
I would
think
agree. I would agree.
yeah, they did a bunch of like moves around the margins today, including getting Patrick Baldwin, not getting Patrick, waiving Patrick Baldwin, getting $4.1 million in some deal, just in like a bag of cash traded to them from by a
But I
different
feel
team.
like you're burying the lead a little bit
Yeah,
on what made the team.
but before all that, the you know the trade for De'Aaron Fox for 3 first-round picks, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, and CD Sissoko. A fantastic trade, both in terms of the value they got him for, and in terms of his pairing with Wemby. I mean, the Spurs, ever since Wemby was drafted for number 1 overall 2 years ago, been looking for a Robin to pair with their wonderkin Batman, and there were a lot of questions about who that would be. Last year they talked about there's a lot of talk about Trae Young, but in De'Aaron Fox, the Spurs get a player who, one, has extensive experience playing with stretch bigs, and two, whose skill set, in particular his speed, his ability to attack the rim, his mid range shooting, the calm he plays with, matches perfectly with Wemby. We saw last night just how deadly. Wemby was bedeviled by, I think, a sinus infection and was basically operating at about 75% for most of the night. But we saw already how dangerous that pick and roll combination is going to be. Like Fox, whenever he tries to speed up, like it looks like he have a little turbo boost on a controller. Like he's just like his first step and his quickness is that fast.
Oh, he accelerates at a
Yeah.
pace that's like unmatched. And
Yeah.
like, I don't know if he just wins an all out race down the court against anybody in the NBA. He accelerates faster than anyone in the NBA for sure.
And what the destabilizing thing that causes for defense is before Fox, the Spurs have not had a point guard, they primarily Chris Paul, who was a offensive threat at both, from basically an offensive on the pick and roll. So Paul is a fantastic passer. He's one of the greatest pick and roll players of all time. But 41 or 40-year-old Chris Paul is not able to get by as defender anymore. And so in the pick and roll with Wemby, one of the reasons it has not been utilized as much this year as we thought it was, teams were just sagging off Paul. They were just cheating. They were playing the pick and roll to prevent Wemby from getting a lob, to prevent Wemby from getting good, to be able to to dive to the rim. And additionally, like that kind of plays into what Wemby naturally wants to do. Wemby naturally wants to pop out to the 3-point line, and so you saw like these combination of factors led to like the pick and roll just generating contested 3-point shots. In last night's game with De'Aaron Fox, like defenses were loading up against Wemby like they had against Paul, and Fox was just blowing by them and getting to the hoop.
Yeah, but I
Over and over again.
also think with Wemby, I think there are two things here that have to be pointed out about the Fox and Wemby pick and roll.
Yeah,
I agree with you completely. Like Fox's downhill speed, his acceleration, like his ability to get a step on you. Like I think Luka, in terms of like just sheer size, can get people on his hip. Him and
Yeah.
LeBron are good at that because of their size. De'Aaron Fox is able to do it because he's just past you. Like you looked and he was standing at point A, and then you blinked and he was at point B. And
Yep.
like he's just that fast. So with that, you do have to, I mean, honestly, you have to cheat to try to stay in
Yep.
front of him. I think that the problem with, like, so take Jokic, for example, pick and roll, he pops. It's not hard because he doesn't get downhill quickly and he's not a lob threat. He may pop to the free throw line. You might get the pocket pass like LeBron and AD would do, where AD get the little elbow jumper or a little push shot, but he's not a lob threat. With Wemby can drop back to the top of the key and shoot the 3-pointer. Wemby can also, like, he can't keep up with, nobody can keep up with De'Aaron Fox, but like he can't keep up with De'Aaron Fox, but he doesn't need to. De'Aaron Fox can just throw it over his head behind him. And long as Wemby's coming, just put it up high and the lob's there.
Well,
like,
and you saw it like in the last play of the game where like he just sort of threw the ball back at Wemby and Wemby gathered it and just jumped straight up and got that got the foul.
The foul. Yeah. Like, and I think that how unpredictable that pick and roll is. Like it can pop, it can be a pocket pass, it can be a lob. Like that makes it very difficult to guard.
Yeah. He also makes a lot of the other Spurs players fall into place. Like Vassell is in over his head as a player who's being forced to be the second option on offense.
Yeah.
He takes a lot of contested mid-range jump shots. He has tunnel vision when he gets the ball. He plays almost like a traditional power, like post power forward, and then he gets the ball and suddenly he gets blinders on. It's like, this shot's going up by the way, boys. So you better not hope that I that I get double teamed. And he also is someone that I think that he's still developing in terms of decision making, in terms of like what shots he should take and what shots he should pass out of. He is one of the players that his ability to hit contested mid-range jumpers can sometimes be a detriment because it leads him to take a lot of really difficult shots when there are other shots available to him that would be easier that he's not looking for. But with Fox in the lineup, he went 9 for 18 last night, and a primary reason for that was the shots he was getting were a lot more open. He was getting hit with he was able to get the ball with defenders crashing in at him, so he's able to get a first step on them, create open mid-range jump shots. He was able to, he was getting hit on back cuts. He was being hit in transition. He made it simplified the game for him, and I think will make him a lot more effective. Sohan coming off the bench.
Well, real quick too. Like, go ahead to Sohan. I don't want to interrupt. Keep going through and how it affects him.
Sohan, is the Spurs' biggest glaring missing piece right now is a backup center, and so the Spurs are experimenting with having Sohan be the backup big to Wemby in a small ball five bench unit, and he played with Wemby as well. Not with Wemby, he played with Fox as well, and their combination is just fantastic. Sohan's a more traditional bruising, bruising four. And so, he's also very agile. Their pick and roll combination worked well. I mean, in fact, what you saw in this last game was the Spurs offense in the Duncan Ginobili Parker years was predicated on the pick and roll. That was the key functional point. The Spurs have gone away from that over the time, in part because for a while now they've missed the point guard who's able to create offense for themselves in that situation. And so, and if you have a point guard who can't create his own shot effectively, the pick and roll just becomes less effective. But you saw the pick and roll unlocked last night in a way it hasn't for any other Spurs game in the Wemby era. I would say that Sohan, you saw the benefits. He shot, I believe, 5 for 6 from the field.
Yep.
High level. He's a good finisher around the rim. All of them were close finishes. And also in the Spurs world, the last piece, Stephon Castle, the number 4 pick of the draft this past year. Probably the second best prospect in the Spurs after Wemby. He already as a rookie can do everything besides shoot. And there was a lot of consternation in the press, will he work next to Fox? He works fantastic next to Fox. One, on defense, he's a perfect pairing.
I think the defensive pairing with him and Fox and Stephen Castle is ideal. Not just will it work; it's ideal.
Castle is 6'7" in shoes. He is tall. He's big, tall. He's athletic. He can break down defenders off the dribble. He compensates for Fox's small frame. He's also a very pesky defender. They're both sort of ball hockey defenders. Fox's and they were pestering the heck out of Trae Young, especially in the first half before the Spurs came out a little more frazzled in the second half. But they played well off of each other. Fox's speed and his shiftiness allows him to generate shots for himself and shots for his teammates, even when defenses get more compact. And he was hitting. He hit Castle on back cuts, on pick and rolls to the rim, and I think the whole offense made a lot more sense. And I think that do I think this is a title contender? No. Do I think that this team has a lot of things to work out? Yes. I think that one of the biggest questions right now is related to Vassell, and I think that they're playing him at the 3. He's not a 3. He's more of a 2. But I think that they need to make a decision about whether they think he can reach the level of being
Well, he could also be a very good bench scorer. But the real quick, one thing I think has to be said too is at this stage in his career, in the game situations, just putting the ball in Wemby's hand and asking him to go get a bucket is a tough ask. Yeah. De'Aaron Fox is among the best in the league at doing that.
The Spurs won a clutch game. That last night. They won a game where they had to it was a coin flip game in the clutch, and they have not won those games this entire year. And the
the play that got them the go ahead bucket was De'Aaron Fox getting downhill, making a play, going up for a layup, and Wemby crashing the boards.
Yep, and Fox, you can already see the leadership coming in. There was. Fox talked about it, but also Wemby talked about it, how at the end of the game, Wemby got the ball and just sort of shoveled it to Fox, and Fox passed it back to him and was like, no, what are you doing? This is, you go to work. And the Spurs have struggled this year because in crunch time, when the game slows down, teams go to a, anybody but Wemby defense. And so they force the ball out of his hands. And then the Spurs, they just sort of,
the last time I saw it, it ended up with Chris Paul trying to create that elbow jumper for himself to win the game because they couldn't get the ball in Wemby's hands. I think I really like the defensive backcourt pairing with Castle and Fox. I really like the two-man action between Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. I really like the Spurs' ability to close out games now. I mean, at this point in their careers, I mean, if I'm a coach calling a play when we need a bucket inside of 20 seconds, I want the ball in De'Aaron Fox's hands. I want him to initiate the offense. I want him to either create a shot for himself or create a look for Wemby that's a high percentage shot for him. I also think that his ability to penetrate defenses will bring Wemby a little. Like, I think he'll get some nice open looks from three, the kind he likes. But I also think it'll get him playing around the rim more.
It's going to draw the ball closer to the rim, which is going to force him to be closer to the rim to get it. That's one of the problems with keeping him outside is like it's Wemby naturally wants to shoot, be a perimeter player, but also when Wemby doesn't have the ball before Fox, the ball would stay at the 3-point line. There was very little penetration. There was very little that was forcing the ball into the post.
Devin Vassell was the only guy you had to worry about dribbling and penetrating from the perimeter on that team prior to this trade.
And even with him, if he's penetrating to the rim, Vassell's not passing it.
No. Yeah.
Once
100%.
he gets inside the arc, Vassell's he's taking a shot. Like damn the torpedoes. So
no, I agree.
I think there are some questions at the workout. They started a backcourt of De'Aaron Fox and Chris Paul last night. It's probably a little small.
More importantly, they closed with a backcourt of Devin. They closed with the backcourt of Chris Paul and De'Aaron Fox.
The Spurs. One gripe, and I think I even texted you this last night, was the defensive possession right before the Wemby got fouled on the next play.
Trae Young just ISO'd Chris Paul and got to
the Spurs had it was after timeout, and the Spurs tried out a defensive lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Chris Paul, and like Harrison Barnes, Wemby and Devin Vassell. Like Chris Paul is not at this point in his career someone you bring out for defense only possessions. Like that's just not like,
especially not when I have Sohan sitting on the bench.
Yeah, and it's when I have Sohan sitting on the bench. Harrison Barnes is not someone you should really be bringing out for defense only possessions. Like they have alternatives. They have
Champagne can be out
a
there.
decent defender. I mean, if you want to go small, Blake Wesley is that is the only thing Blake Wesley does. He is a ball hawk. He will generate he's averaging over a steal a game in 5 minutes. So if you're really dedicated you want to have two small guards. But predictably, the Hawks came out there and just and went right at Paul. I think that's a coaching mishap. I think that there's going to need to be. I think that the Spurs now have the opportunity to run more offensive sets. Like the Spurs offense needs to become more professionalized. And what I mean by that specifically is a lot of this right now is just generic motion offense you're seeing. They have some sets. I'm not trying to say they don't have any sets. They have some sets they go to, and they have a lot of sets that have intricate variation, a couple variations to it. So they have a couple different possibilities. But if you watch a Spurs game, the offensive sets they run are less sophisticated than say the Thunder or say, the Celtics. There's definitely they're running 4 or 5 per game. And 4 or 5 with a couple of different variations involved in each. And I would like to see some the offense get a little more complex is the best way to put it.
Well, I think it will. I think there are a couple of things with that. I think it will. De'Aaron Fox is a point guard who Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards to ever play the game. Incredible court vision, can make any pass on the floor, knows how to manipulate defenses to create opportunities for himself and others, all that. Chris Paul is beyond the years where he is seen as a penetrating threat. And I think that De'Aaron Fox's ability to get downhill will, in and of itself, force the defense into a different posture. And De'Aaron Fox can create for others as well. So you're not really giving up much in terms of court vision. I mean, I think Chris Paul probably intellectually and from a vision point of view is probably superior to De'Aaron Fox still, but like everything else De'Aaron Fox has on him. And so I think there's that element. Whereas you were just more limited with the guy with the ball in his hands being Chris Paul prior to that. I also think that De'Aaron Fox is used to playing off of Domantas Sabonis, which is different in a lot of ways, but there are also a lot of similarities. Domantas Sabonis has actually somehow blossomed into a fantastic 3-point shooting big.
Like 45% plus, like one of the best, like low volume.
Last I looked, he was the highest in the league, and I think it was around like 48 or 49%.
He's dead eye now.
Yeah, and so I think that I said one of the best 3-point shooting bigs in the league. He's just one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. But so there are similarities. I mean, the game doesn't look the same, but it often results in shots from similar places on the court. And I think that Wemby and De'Aaron Fox will be able to expedite the implementation of that pairing. And then finally, I think, and then I'll ask you for your grade. But the final point I'll make on this trade that I think over the course of a few games, you will see the effect of this. You now have two guys on the floor who need to get a certain amount of shots up every game.
Yep.
And one of them has the ball in his hands virtually every possession. Some of the erratic shots that you saw from the Devin Vassell's of the world, the Keldon Johnsons of the world, that kind of stuff is going to be taken off the table. Those guys are going to get opportunities in very specific moments. And their shot diet is going to be dwindled down to what the team wants them to, the shots the team wants them to take. And I think that's going to drastically increase the efficiency of a player like Devin Vassell.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that the better lineup for this team is De'Aaron Fox and Devin Vassell as the starters over Chris Paul.
I completely agree. Devin Vassell, or Stephon Castle should be starting at the 2 guard.
Yeah, I mean, because of Stephon Castle's size, I like him more at the 3. But
I actually like that too. Yeah.
But I think that Devin Vassell as the 2 guard and the really kind of 3A or 3B scoring option on the team, because he gets his buckets differently than Stephon Castle does, but I really see them as sort of.
Yeah,
I think Devin Vassell could probably score at a higher clip right now than Stephon Castle could consistently, but
they're complementary scorers. Vassell wants to take mid-range shots. Castle wants to get downhill and get to the rim. Castle is actually already one of the better in-game dunkers, sneakily in the game. Like, he's collected at least.
We're going to find out how good of an out-of-game dunker he is in a week or so.
Yeah, well, that I'm wondering. He's sneakily very athletic, but he's also he's physically strong and he plays under control. But he wants to attack the rim, and so in practice they should work well together. That's complementary, especially if Castle's able to develop more and more of a jump shot. But with Vassell, it's all going to be about shot diet, and what shots he's taking. If he can refine if he can become more efficient and take better shots, and prioritize that over volume, I think that he becomes a long-term piece, like a valuable long-term piece for this team. Going to the grade potential, before we go right there, Spurs got Fox without giving up any of their core roster pieces.
Yeah, that's another important piece.
When we talked about the trade a couple weeks ago, last week, I think it was actually last week, we were mentioning about them having to give up potentially Castle and Vassell.
Yeah.
In a trade. They didn't have to give up either.
Well, we were definitely saying Sohan and Vassell, or Castle and Vassell. It wasn't going to be one of them. It was going to be both.
It was And like the Kings ended up prioritizing other stuff. They ended up prioritizing getting Zach LaVine over getting young players, which helped reduce the cost. But this is now one of the best, most talented young cores in the league.
Yeah, and you've got it for a while.
You do.
What do you grade the trade for the San Antonio Spurs?
A+. I think like the Luka trade's almost on a different level in terms of can you invent a different grade higher than A?
Yeah.
Platinum, A platinum, whatever.
Well,
But like
it's also because it's a trade that shouldn't have ever happened.
yes,
That
but in terms of like a traditional trade of where they didn't end up giving any of their prime draft assets either. They gave up 3 picks, one of which is a fake pick to Sacramento. What I mean by that is that it's basically I believe it's Charlotte Hornets 2025 top 15 protected pick, which converts into seconds. And so the Hornets are not making the playoffs, so that is definitely converting into seconds. There's they gave up one of their Minnesota picks they got from the Dillingham trade, and they gave up a 2027 San Antonio first. But they kept all the picks they got in the DeJounte Murray trade. They kept the pick swap they have with the Kings. For some reason, the Kings did not ask for their own pick swap back, which I'm sort of mind boggled by that. They kept a lot of their premium assets. I think the Spurs, like, I've had my criticisms with this front office. They did a really really good job on this one. There's no way around it. They did a fantastic job. Yeah.
I give this trade an A+. I don't even see the negative side of the trade. I think that the Spurs, the assets that they gave up to land a premier point guard in this league that contrasts and pairs perfectly with Wemby at the age De'Aaron Fox is at, and like zero on the court, off the court problems, just a stand up dude who brings leadership. I think it's a perfect pairing. I think it's an A+. Speaking of like zero off the court problems, perfect temperament, um, no concerns in that arena. What do you think of Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors?
I think what the Golden State locker room has definitely needed this last few years is a combustible and unpredictable presence. I think that that's exactly what we've seen.
I agree
Seeing
with
what
you about that.
happened. Yeah, I think
They
seeing
need
what happened.
someone who has a little bit of an edge to them. I
Yeah,
think Draymond Green, since the Nurkic incident, has toned it down a little bit, and he's not able to uphold his end of the deal. And
yeah.
so they need to bring someone in there who can spice things up a little bit.
They definitely need someone known for his flash temper. And for threatening to fight and beat up coaches and teammates. That's something that was definitely missing from Golden State the last couple of years. But I think that trade to me, I mean, let's just give the context. We woke up today. Um, Basically everyone, or I think it actually was yesterday. The rumors of Kevin Durant going to Golden State were starting to hit like full on fever pitch, like
Well,
full on.
I think it was basically a done deal until Kevin Durant hit.
Yeah, and then Kevin Durant, like seemingly like uh, the timing of it was odd because it seemed almost like he was like in some like darkness retreat, and then he's like, wait, this is actually happening. Oh shit, because it had been going on publicly for like a day, so like, but he finally weighed in and was like, I don't want to go back to Golden State, and so that squashed that, but this whole Butler saga, he clearly just wanted to get an extension of some kind. Like, he didn't get the extension. He views this as his last major contract. That he's acted like he acted like a spoiled child, just to be quite
Yeah,
blunt.
real quick, just sort of recap it. Like he wanted to get another extension. The Miami Heat, I think, had made it pretty clear they were not going to extend him. Um, and instead of playing out the season and then seeing what could happen in the offseason, which is what Miami clearly wanted to do, they said they had no interest in trading Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler basically threw a temper tantrum, started missing, like showing up late to team practices, missing team flights, and just playing intentionally bad on the floor. And that resulted in a couple of subsequent suspensions between him and Pat Riley. I mean, basically, it became a dick measuring contest between Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley. And somehow I think both of them won it. And what ended up happening was Jimmy Butler forced himself into a situation where he had a prearranged extension agreed upon with Golden State, and he ends up getting $121 million in an extra year out of it. And so he certainly got what he wanted, or at least a fair portion of what he wanted. And the Miami Heat end up landing Andrew Wiggins. And who was the other piece with that one? It was
Kyle Anderson,
Kyle Anderson.
Andrew Wiggins, and Dennis Schroeder, who was then
Well,
rerouted
Schroeder's been traded
to
16
about
times
half the
since
league
then.
since then. Yeah,
Yeah, he's been
he was
traded.
briefly in Utah. I don't think he's in Utah anymore. I think he ended up somewhere
Detroit?
else. He's in Detroit now.
Yeah.
This was after publicly decrying the how the trade deadline.
Real quick,
Yeah.
because I don't want to spend much time on Miami, but I think that given the situation Miami was in, being able to squeeze Andrew Wiggins and Kyle Anderson out of it was actually not a bad idea, a bad deal. I think both of those
They
guys
got
actually,
better. They
Yeah.
got better from this trade. Like better from Jimmy Butler is still a very good player, but he's 35. He's not there. He
wasn't going to be theirs anymore. And even
yeah.
while he wasn't playing or adding anything of value to the team. They clearly got better from where they were yesterday. No question about that. That's inarguable.
They needed some youth athleticism too.
But the question becomes, what did the Warriors, like, where are the Warriors at? Like, what does Jimmy Butler do for the Warriors?
I've seen a lot of commentary. This trade happened today, so like people are still processing it. But a lot of the commentary I hear is that he's gonna be a good fit for the Warriors. I don't get that. He's a power forward at this point. Like he is like that. So to fit him and Draymond, you're having Butler at power forward and Draymond at center. That's just a very small lineup. Like it's very small. It's limited shooting in both positions. I don't necessarily think that they are Draymond and Butler are a good locker room fit. There seems to be a lot of potential for chaos there. And I also can you explain to me how you see the natural fit between Curry and Butler? That one makes that's a little off to me. Like it's not the easiest fit.
I think one thing I like about the fit with Butler and Golden State. Now, I mean, I don't think this really does much in terms of like making. Sorry, I'm actually watching Golden State while I talk, but I don't think this does a ton to lift the ceiling of this team to anything that is of any consequence. Like this team is not a contender with Jimmy Butler. This team is not even a top 3 or 4 or 5 team in the Western Conference with Jimmy Butler. With that said, I think Jimmy Butler's ability to move off ball, he's a smart player. I think he fits in with a lot of what Steve Kerr wants to do. He doesn't give you an awful lot of shooting, but he is a really tenacious player. When Jimmy Butler is locked in, and I suspect you will get a locked in Jimmy Butler. He's a tough, gritty player who can muck up games. I think that pairs very well with Draymond Green. I think he moves off ball very well, which pairs very well with Steph Curry. And I think that he's a hustle guy. When you get him bought in, and I suspect he will be bought in. I think that going into this whole thing, like I've said, like based on the way Jimmy Butler acted in Miami, I wouldn't want anything to do with getting in the Jimmy Butler business. Golden State obviously disagreed. I don't think they really gave up anything important for their future. Andrew Wiggins is a good player, but like it's not like Andrew Wiggins is a young up and coming prospect that's showing a lot of glimmers of promise. He sort of is what he is, and he's a good player who'll fit in very well, not just in Golden State but in Miami. So I give the trade. I give it a B minus.
Yeah, I think B minus C plus. The reason I make that really clear is I don't This trade was particularly bemusing. One, because Butler had said that he wasn't going to go here. The Heat, he was refusing to go to the Warriors. The Warriors
Yeah.
players had seemingly done interviews talking about how they didn't want the team to make win now moves that could risk the future of the franchise, and that those interviews were done immediately after the initial rumors about Butler going to Golden State had happened. So it didn't seem like neither side seemed particularly interested in having this pairing, but once the KD thing fell through, the Warriors, even despite Draymond and Steph's claims about not wanting to make win now moves, it's very clear they felt need to maximize Curry. And I
Well,
think that
the way that everybody talked about this was that the owner of the team became very frustrated with the fact that they were 500.
yeah,
I would venture to guess that the Lakers landing Luka also probably threw a few logs on that fire.
yes,
And they felt some pressure to bring in a star to pair with their aging star.
yeah.
Um,
The
I don't,
this doesn't bring him over the top, and
no,
I
no,
also don't see a natural move that you can pair with this that's gonna what's the move in the offseason that you can make to add on to the Butler, Curry, Draymond core that will make it a title contender?
no, 100%,
Curry's
100,
37. Curry's 37 years old. This is an incredibly old team now. This is Draymond's probably close to 35, 36. Butler's 35. Or turning 36. Curry's 37. This is we have not seen an NBA team with three stars of this age playing together. This is
I don't think that, like I said earlier, I don't think that this trade puts you over the hump, in any way. I think it makes you more competitive. I think if you get into a playoff series with a young, inexperienced team, you might be able to take advantage of them, especially if they're a team that sort of um, struggles, to deal with like gritty, like muck it up type teams. Because I think that's exactly what this Golden State team will be. And but at the same time, like they made a win now move, but they didn't. Like I don't see them as like having leveraged the future, and like put the franchise's future in jeopardy. I think they brought in another star to make Steph's remaining years more competitive, so that he's just not languishing at the very bottom of the Western Conference. I think that this trade accomplishes that. That's why I give it a B minus. I actually think, in terms of like coming out of it on top, I actually think that the Miami Heat did better for themselves. I don't think that they didn't bring in a player that has more value than Jimmy Butler, but they certainly improved their situation more.
I would think if we're looking at this impartially, I think that the difference between Andrew Wiggins and Jimmy Butler at this point is smaller than we would believe. I think Wiggins actually this year been playing quite good. Um, but no, I think this is ultimate win now move. I'm gonna give it a C plus because I don't think that it raises the. If I'm gonna make a move like this, if I'm the Warriors, I want one that makes me at least have an outside shot at title contention. This move is
I guess
not
the
gonna make.
question though becomes, what is that? It's either like, because I think that the answer to that question is, unless Rob, and
Well, it's why
here's
they
the
were
answer.
swinging
Here's
for. It's
well,
why
here's
they were
the
swinging
answer.
for Durant. It's why they were swinging for Durant.
Sure,
What?
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Well, like, unless Nico Harrison's going to pick the phone up and just call you out of the blue one day, that move isn't coming. Like, you weren't going to get Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant didn't want to go back to Golden State. I don't really blame him.
The move was Laurie Markin in this offseason. That was the
Don't
move.
disagree with you, but do you want to give up a first team All NBA player in the making like Brandon Pajemski? That's what they said.
Yes.
You don't want
Yes.
to. Yeah,
I
they
will give up.
said.
I will give up seven Brandon Majemskis. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
to be clear, like,
Yeah.
you have a different talent evaluation of Brandon Pajemski than the Golden State Warriors do, who see him as, probably the next John Stockton, uh, and like most teams would do, when you have an incredible All NBA level player, you play them in spot minutes, um, and
But, yeah. The,
yeah,
the Warriors, unique player development strategy with both Moses Moody uh
Kaminga.
and Kaminga, where they continuously refuse to play them and get into public squabbles with both of their young players, and then make it clear they don't want to either re-sign them for longer contracts or trade them. There are questions to talk about the development program of the Golden State Warriors. But
100%. They're just so fully focused on Draymond and Steph, and I think now Jimmy Butler, that people like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Brendan Pajemski kind of getting left behind. But like I said, like I think that what Golden State did was said, we don't want Steph's remaining years to be just sort of languishing at the bottom of the Western Conference. We want to bring in a star that just makes them slightly more competitive. And I think that they've done that.
And for that, I applaud them. I do actually believe that if you are going to keep your generational star around, then you need to make I don't think that them just sort of like slowly drifting off into the sun, into the sunset is fair to them. Like, I think like one of the things we've seen with, like the Lakers got Luka now, but that fell into their lap. But with like the last couple of years with LeBron, where it's just sort of been like the Lakers don't want to make a huge win now move, and LeBron's just sort of sitting there. We've seen the same thing in Golden State. Like if you, it's incumbent upon you, if you have these type of players, to try to put rosters around them that can compete for title contention.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you let them go. Yeah.
All right. Well, we can stop there. I mean, that pretty much wraps up the most eventful trade deadline. I mean, I'm not even Shams, and I was stressed out watching this trade deadline. The Luka trade threw me for a loop. Sort of recap it. I think we both agreed on all the trade grades. I actually don't know did you agree on the grade for Golden State, Jimmy Butler?
I was even harsher. I was a C+.
C+. Yeah. All right. So like we've got the Lakers getting a AAA, triple plus made up score for a trade that should have never happened. We get the Dallas Mavericks getting a triple F, triple plus.
Gave them an omega sign for their
just whatever. Like you shouldn't even be allowed to. Nico Harrison should be run out of Dallas today for that trade. But we gave De'Aaron Fox and the Spurs an A+, and then we'll I said B-, you said C+. It's pretty close on the Golden State Warriors Jimmy Butler trade. We both thought that Miami actually did well for themselves in that trade, though. So
yeah, I want to end on one note first. I want to thank the Atlanta Hawks for seemingly deciding to tank when they don't have their draft picks for the next 3 years. I do not know why they were trading away DeAndre Hunter as well as Bogdan Bogdanovic.
I like that move for Cleveland, though.
I like the move for Cleveland a lot, but I do not understand what they were doing. But the Spurs own their pick this year. They own their pick next year, and they own their pick the year after that. So those picks all look a lot better. So for that, I say thank you.
Yes. And the player they gave up all those picks for is out for the season with a torn Achilles down in New Orleans. So don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really enjoy having these conversations with y'all. We've really enjoyed the interaction with y'all. Comment on our videos. We always comment back. Share our content with your friends and family. And until next time, take care.
Peace.